It's always easy when you've got a director who knows what he wants. And, you know, the script called for huge leaps of the imagination, and Joe's not shy in coming forward in that regard. So it was then a matter of managing what he wanted and making it happen and making everybody happy.
The thing I love about Joe is, much as we were going for it and long big speeches and massive costumes, there's a beautiful scene in the middle with Peter, and you know, Joe was like, let's really explore the loneliness, the sadness, the soulfulness of this character who's been around for a long time and is partly terrified of losing what he has worked hard to get, but also perhaps he might be relieved to actually be able to let it go.
When you're dealing with absolutely nothing but a sheet of green, it gets to be difficult. I mean, the stages out there at Cardington, the one, like I said, was this Neverland Village, and so obviously it gives you things to look at. I mean, you're always stuck there sort of, you know, relying on the director. When you don't have the sets, you're wondering what you're looking at.
Very few directors in a movie of this scale for a family audience who would allow an actor to go there, and I really, really love that, and I think that's the hallmark probably of Joe's work.
I do kind of have an idea of what I want it to be and look like, and then, because I get really scared, and so I want to have things kind of set, do you know what I mean, so I know what I'm doing. And really for me, a lot of directing is about peeling that away and allowing space for the surprising.
Working with Levi was one of the best parts of the whole experience because he is so young and so new, and he has no cynicism, you know, he just came so open every day. He never complained, and he was so curious and asked so many questions. If Joe was explaining something and he didn't understand it, he wasn't embarrassed to ask what a word meant. He was just yeah, I mean, it made using your imagination much easier when Levi was around.
It was really just about finding the right actor, and as soon as Levi popped up on screen and did his audition, it was quite clear that he was our guy.
When I first met Levi, I'm not sure if you remember this, it was rehearsals and I got out of the car and you were playing footy or something with Nibsy, and anyway. You came up and you said, "Oh, hi, Mr. Jackman, it's nice to meet you." And I was like, "Oh, no, it's Hugh. Mr. Jackman is my dad." And he was so polite and so respectful, and you continued that way for the entire film. And exactly what Rooney said, we are ridiculously lucky to do our job. First of all, it's something all of us grew up doing in some way, shape or form. We all love it. And when you're working with a then 11-year-old on his first job, who can't believe that he's in Neverland and not at school, and having the time of his life, it's infectious and one of those great reminders that, no, it's not, oh, I've got to wake up early, I've got to do this, or that. It's just we are the luckiest people on the planet, and he's an extraordinary actor, close your ears, who's about, the world's about to fall in love with him, and it's just as natural as can be for him, and it was a real privilege to work with you.
Welcome along, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Without further ado, I would very much like to welcome our cast and filmmakers this morning. Please put your hands together and welcome to the press conference director Joe Wright, playing Peter Pan, Levi Miller, the one they call Blackbeard, Mr. Hugh Jackman, the wonderful Rooney Mara, Tiger Lily, Hook himself, Garrett Headland, and producer Paul Webster. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Paul, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay, at the far end of the table. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
You're a long-term collaborator with Joe, and I just wanted to ask you about how easy it was for you to create this world of Neverland, this vision that you both had.
Well, and we were lucky enough to have huge support from Warner Brothers. So it really wasn't that difficult. It was difficult making it. People tended to say yes to us an awful lot, which was an extraordinary experience as a producer.
Quite a unique one.
Yeah.
Garrett, welcome along this morning. What a wonderful character. It very much looked like you had a lot of fun playing. There's an amazing tone to your character in terms of both physically and kind of mentally. There's a little bit of slapstick in there, the way he kind of throws himself around. Was it a lot of fun to throw yourself into that?
It was. Yeah, he can be quite uncoordinated at times. I think when we were first sort of doing rehearsals, I think we kind of laughed at this notion, and Joe was explaining, he's like, you know, when somebody's always trying to do the right thing, but they just can't help but mess it up, and how comedic that can end up being, and we always sort of loved that idea of it, and it had a lot to do with Hook, yeah.
Rooney, Tiger Lily, she's a girl that I think is a wonderful role model to young girls who are going to watch this film as well. She's fierce, she's feisty, she's honest, and she's loyal. What are the qualities that you really, I don't know, kind of admired in her, or admire in her?
Yeah, I mean, I was just happy to sort of be the girl in a film like this that isn't sort of a damsel in distress. You know, it was cool to get to play the female part who was sort of more capable and badass than the guys. I thought that was really, you rarely see that, and so that was really fun to get to play a character who's so capable.
And Hugh.
Hello.
Blackbeard.
Yes. Or as my son affectionately called, a black and white beard. Thanks. It was a real confidence builder as I went off to work. See a black and white beard?
There's good in him, you see. Maybe that's what he was trying to imply. He sees good in him.
Exactly.
How involved were you in the creation of him, you know, in the look and the mannerisms and all that kind of side of it?
When I was in early talks with Joe, my son happened to have a subscription to the Junior National Geographic, which had this section on Blackbeard, and I was like, oh, yes, done my research, this is great. And Blackbeard, I'm reading, it had this amazing story of how he used to stick incense inside his beard and light it on fire before a battle. So as he jumped onto your ship, it looked like his head was on fire, and I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Joe, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, no. And Joe, when we first met, I said, well, what's your vision? And he had a picture on his iPad of my face with kind of white cracked makeup on, like an old master's sort of painting, with the wig of Marie Antoinette and the costume of Louis XIV and all these rings, and I was just like, that's a much better idea. And I tell that story because I had a couple of ideas, but in truth, 90 to 95% was Joe, the hair and makeup department, the costume department, and their ideas were just so much better than mine. And I think most days, Joe, I thanked you for doing like 80% of my work as an actor. Because you walk on set with that wig, that costume, and everyone's like, wow, and you're just standing there, you know?
Levi, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Let's give him a round of applause. Can I take you back to that first day on set and kind of how you felt and what it was like after that first day?
Yes, my first day on set was with the water. It was in the water at Pinewood Studios, and I was completely submerged underwater in a harness. And I remember I had to equalize so I could get further down. And the further you got, there was a window, and you got further enough, and I could see everyone in there. It was pretty cool. It was a really fun day, but it was a hard first day on set, I think. It was quite hard.
I threw you in the deep end.
Joe, what a wonderful world you've created, and just gorgeous, gorgeous characters. It sounds like from everyone, the way that they talk is that you very much had a very clear vision about this film and how you wanted it made and how you saw each character. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Let's get some surprises from our audience, shall we? Yes, so many hands to start with. It's great. We've got a microphone there, and we'll get another one after that one there. So, sir.
Question for Hugh. Joe says in the press notes you are the nicest man in show business, and I think we all agree with that, anyone that's ever met you. But I wonder, when you get a role like this, what sort of villains have influenced you in literature and films growing up?
By the way, my mum was at the premiere yesterday, and she was asked, well, told, I suppose, by a few people, said, oh, your son is known as the nicest guy in Hollywood. And she said, I think we used to call that manners. He said, we taught him manners, and if he doesn't, I'm going to smack him, you know. The Wicked Witch of the West was one that I thought of because it was the first movie I remember seeing, and I remember being terrified by that, but enthralled by that character. It's a big kind of character. It's one of the great performances, and those monkeys. So in terms of, for me, Hannibal Lecter, Alan Rickman and Die Hard, they're sort of the villains that I remember sort of loving. But, you know, Joe, I'm not going to say, but when we talked, Joe said, you know, Neverland is a child's imagination, and all the adults, which is basically the pirates, have to be as kids see adults, which is frightening and ridiculous. So for you, Blackbeard, obviously there's bigger portions of frightening than ridiculous, but there still has to be some ridiculous in there, and go for it, you know. And so once you're operating from that world, we're in a child's imagination, which is not dissimilar to The Wizard of Oz, actually, then there's a freedom to play and have fun, and we did have a lot of fun, I think, yeah.
Okay, next question over there.
Phil Bar 24/7. My question's for each of the cast members, and this was an extremely fun to watch. I can only imagine how much fun it was to film it itself. My question was which were your favourite moments individually to film? Which bits did you have the most fun filming with?
Who wants to pick that up for us?
Oh, I'll speak up. Joe's birthday in particular was a very fun day. Joe, you know, when we were shooting at these the stages, Cardington stages outside Bedford, there were these incredible sets for Neverland, and I think it's one of the biggest sets UK's ever had. And we'd have 200 extras dressed up as the natives and the cast and crew, and Joe's quite the DJ, and every day, I mean, not just his birthday, but every day he would play music in between all the takes, and you know, we're filming this story that's so full of youth and imagination, and here we are, the cast and crew, all dancing together, and sort of, no matter how old you were, get to feel like you're a kid again. And I think that was very necessary for this film. It was one of my favorite, moments. I'd never experienced it before.
Can you remember the tune?
Oh, there was some ABBA in there.
No, there was not.
There was a lot of Deanne's board as well.
No, there was
No, there wasn't any ABBA.
DJ Minerva's Township Funk was
Yes, that was
crowd
the one.
pleaser.
Yeah. I've never been to Burning Man, but I think the set was as
Yeah.
close as to Burning Man as you can get. You're in Neverland with non-stop music playing. It was great.
Okay, next question. Jenna's got a microphone there.
Hi there. I have a question for everyone from my 10-year-old son, Hag. He would like to know, if you had a fairy in real life, what kind of temperament would it have?
Hugh, do you want to pick that one up?
Would you get to choose, or you just mean like what?
And that'd be good for me. I don't know what
That's
I'd
kind of
call
like
it.
how Tinkerbell is. Like she's kind of,
Right.
she's like a little bitchy.
Yeah.
Levi, do you have any? Oh, I think. Yeah.
Companion.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and over to the man over there.
Joe, did you do much research into Barry himself as a way of maintaining the spirit of Peter Pan and as in terms of what you want to do with this? And also, Hugh, what was it like to come on the screen performing Nirvana?
I didn't know, to be honest with you. I read and reread the book of Peter Pan and was fascinated by the world that he created, which felt very strange to me and kind of psychologically acute. And I think it's no surprise that he was writing at the same time as Freud. And but I didn't kind of sort of research him as a human being that much.
If I was going to answer what was my favourite day on set, I was absolutely thinking that. Not only favourite day, I mean, you're getting a window into the egocentric nature of me, but when you have hundreds of kids singing Nirvana as you enter, that's a moment I never really forgot. And that was not something that was in the script. That was, Joe likes to do a lot of improv and rehearsal, create the characters together in a more classical kind of theatrical way, and it's create an ensemble and a feeling, and it's what makes working with Joe so unique. And it was about halfway through that, we turned up one day and we're all handed the lyrics to Teen Spirit by Nirvana, and I presumed it was either a vocal warm-up or some kind of improv, and Joe said, I don't know, let's try it out, maybe this is your entrance. I was like, yes. But again, Joe's brilliant idea and a moment I'll never forget.
One that
And it's
you know
fun having
consistent.
11-year-olds singing those words, and having really no idea what they're singing about.
But Kurt Cobain was the ultimate lost boy.
Yeah, right.
Okay, who's got the microphone over here? Hi.
Firstly, I just want to say the mise en scène of the whole film is amazing. And secondly, to Rooney, Hugh, Garrett and Levi, I know that in the movie Blackbeard uses fairy dust to stay young. In real life, if you could use fairy dust to do anything, what would you use it for?
Rooney, you can pick that one up.
I'm the only one who can say to stay young on this panel.
Rooney?
I don't know, maybe if it could like make you smarter and more articulate, more likable, give you a better
Yes.
personality. I mean, I
Yeah.
think using it to help you fly would be that would be pretty unique to be able to fly.
Yeah, this is great.
Garrett?
Yeah, I'd use it to study. Use it to
I think they have things
finish
for
a book. Finish a book in one sitting.
Levi?
I think that I would use it for a range of different things. I think I wouldn't just use it there has to be different types. Like one would be for flying, so I could get to places quicker. And yes, to help studying, definitely help. Yes, lots of different ways.
I like that. Different dust for different days. Okay, we're going to go over this side now. Who's got the microphone, please? There we go. Hi.
Hi, my name is Celia from Spain. I have some questions. The first one is for the director. With this end, when Peter Pan say you are Captain Hook, this is like you have in mind a second part to explain what is going on. I mean, obviously you have to explain maybe in the future why afterwards the Captain Hook is the biggest enemy for Peter Pan. And I don't know if have you got any projects in mind that you can advance today? Yes.
I think, the fevered mind of Jason Fuchs, the writer, has got some ideas about where he'd like to take these characters and what he'd like to learn about them. But the opportunity for a sequel really depends on the audience and whether they would like one.
Did you have another question?
Yes, sorry. Yes, my second question, after congratulate you as a lovely new actor, I have a question for Hugh. I don't want to ask you what do you prefer to be a superhero or to be the bad boy. I would like to know how is the welcome that you receive at home. It is better when you are the superhero, or is better when you are the enemy of Peter Pan?
Well, the kids really don't talk about it much. I think when I get home, they just like me to be dad. But from my wife's perspective, she said, I think this is one of the sexiest characters you play. It was a good summer last year. Here they talk about the summer of '76. I talk about the summer of 2014.
Good answer. Down here, where's the microphone? There we go. Brilliant. I'll come to you next.
Hi, I know Levi, you've probably been asked a lot what you've picked up from the rest of your castmates, but a question for Hugh, Rooney and Garrett, what have you picked up from Levi?
Oh, that's a great question.
Oh, I mean, so much. It was...
Thank you.
Great question. There we go.
Question for Hugh. There was a saying many years ago that all boys wanted to grow up to be engine drivers. I'm assuming that all actors grow up wanting to play a pirate. And is it the ultimate role for an actor? Because there's nowhere that you can't. You can go all the way with it. You know, there's nothing to hold you back.
Yeah, there's no rules, for sure. I mean, I do remember watching Scaramouche. I do remember at drama school, my 3 years of drama school, we had to do compulsory fencing classes. It was a kind of traditional school, and I loved it. I mean, some of the actors complained, and, oh, what's this, what's the point? I genuinely loved it, and in my final year, we had to do a movement piece, right, which we created, and I actually recreated Princess Bride, the classic sword fight, at Domingo Montoya, you know, I have 5 fingers, prepared to die, all of that. And so honestly, I said to Rooney when we started, and I said, oh, I can't wait for scene 85. It's like sort of like one massive...
Well, yeah, now I realize you've been training for it for years. And
years. So we did work it out, and then Joe said, I love this scene, let's put it up on the mast, you know, on the gymnastics beam, basically. That was hard. But yeah, being a pirate is, come on, it's a great joy. And to be honest, if Joe had asked me to play the street sweeper, I would have said yes. But to be in a Joe Wright film playing a pirate, that's a dream come true, yeah.
I literally heard when we were discussing who we should offer the role of Blackbeard to, and I said I'd really like to offer it to Hugh Jackman, and we had word coming back saying, Hugh has always wanted to play a pirate. And I was like, yeah. Really? That's like, not like, you know, Romeo or?
No, it was awesome.
Lady down here.
Hi. Sorry. It's a question for Hugh, but potentially second part of the question for Joe. Congratulations on Blackbeard. I agree with your wife. But the audience is left there wondering what life event turned Blackbeard so nasty. And so, you know, I wish, you know, that there would be, maybe in the future, so maybe there is something in the backstory of this
Mm.
character that we don't know, that some clues that you can give us that can give us some idea of what made him so nasty. And the second part of my question would be for Joe, and it would be, are there any plan for maybe a prequel on Blackbird story?
Prequel of the prequel.
Yeah, prequel of the prequel.
She really liked your Blackbeard.
Which country are you from, by the way?
Italy, but I believe in London.
Italy. Okay, so for the Italian market, we'll do the yes. No. Well, there's a few things in the script. I don't want to give away any spoilers in his background, particularly with Peter's mother, Mary. But you know, it was. But as an actor, no matter whether you're playing a good or bad, you have to understand why they do what they do. And here's someone who's worked really, really hard to gain control. And a lot of people can relate to that of their life and are terrified of losing it, power, control, all of that stuff. So that's him.
There has been no discussion about a prequel to Blackbeard, but I like the idea very much.
Me too.
Lady down the front here, please.
This was a question for you. You certainly seem to throw yourself into the physical preparation for a role, in this case even go as far as shaving your head. Is there anything you wouldn't do to prepare for a role, or maybe think, I'm just going to leave that to makeup? And also, how far would you go in the pursuit of eternal youth?
I don't think I've said no to anything that I thought was a good idea. Actually, it's more down to loneliness than it's more down to laziness than a lack of vanity. Honestly, the hair and makeup department said, we can do a bald cap every day if you're like that. And I said, how long does that take? And they said 45 minutes. I said, give me the clippers. It was great, 45 minutes of sleep or bald cap, and so that was great. And I don't know. I'm a big believer in sort of what Jay and Barry, and I think what this film is kind of trying to promote, which is that age or is more about how you feel about life than the chronological age, or whether you got a black and white beard or wrinkles. I think Jay and Barry was saying in the book, and by the way, I highly recommend reading that book if you haven't read it as an adult, because it's almost a cautionary tale of not losing that childlike sense of wonder and magic that is in the world. And actually, Joe and I were just talking how somewhere around the age of adolescence, we decide to be cool and to start looking at what other people think we should think about things or feel about things, and young kids don't have that, and that's the danger. That's what makes you start to grow old, but actually that sense of possibility and hope, which is what Pan is all about, what Neverland is about, which is really stay young in here, have that glint in your eye, see possibility, see hope. Life is an adventure, life can be fantastic, and that's sort of our choice really. And so the truth is I'm lucky I'm an actor. My job is to be a kid, and I probably maturity-wise stopped around by the age of 8 or 9 somehow in there, and I'm happy to stay there.
Paul, can I just follow up a question from earlier with regards to casting and specifically with Levi in terms of finding Levi and casting Levi, and for you as well, Joe, in terms of first major role, and if that was an important thing in terms of the way he came into this production of not really having lots of experience and it being quite pure, I guess.
Yeah, we saw kind of over 4,000 taped auditions, and there were a couple in there who'd had more experience than Levi, but they weren't as good. So it wasn't, there was a long, arduous process up to the point of seeing Levi, and then it was easy. Then it was just like, okay, get him on a plane. He'd never left Australia before, had you, or not?
No, I'd left Australia. I went on a trip around Europe when I was a bit younger.
Right. How old were you when you went around Europe?
I was about 10, around 10.
Yeah.
Backpacking with your mates?
So it was quite, one had to be careful of making sure he was going to be all right, and protecting him a little bit, and that was a responsibility that we all took seriously. But it was just lovely, kind of hanging out with Levi. Really, it was cool. He reminded. I kept on kind of, thinking he was a bit like my son, so but a bit older, and my son loved meeting him, and they'd have lunch together. My son's only 4, but they'd have lunch.
And what happened when you called Levi to tell him he got the part?
Oh, he started screaming.
No, that's
so deep.
It wasn't me.
Where were you as well?
What do you mean it wasn't you?
My sisters. Well, my sisters, yes, they were outside and they were screaming. I was crying.
Sure.
Oh, you were crying. Okay. Whatever it was, I couldn't hear anything.
What did you say to him?
I said, Levi, I'd like you to play Peter. And he went, and I had to put the phone down because it hurt my ear. And then called him back later.
Were you at home?
And he was still crying.
That's amazing. Lovely story. Okay, gentleman down here has got the microphone, and then we'll get a mic over there in a second.
Question for Levi. It's your first role, and it's a fabulous debut.
How was the whole filming experience for you? And is this acting gig something you want to pursue for a career? Do you see yourself as the next Daniel Radcliffe?
Well, and I would absolutely love to be an actor. It's fun, getting to meet all these people and see all these amazing sets, and even it's a brilliant experience. And yeah, I'd absolutely love to pursue it.
I think you already are an actor, Levi.
Yeah.
For sure. For
But,
sure.
but the sets won't all be as amazing as this
Oh,
one, just
yes,
so you know.
yes, but
Nor the people.
Nor the people.
All right, let's not cloud him away.
It's a life of loneliness, fear.
Let's have a next question.
Hello. Neverland is a completely made-up place. My question is for Joe, excuse me. So how did you create this wonderful and colorful land? What was your inspiration?
Planet Earth was the inspiration, and the National Geographic magazine. We basically, as Hugh mentioned earlier, I think I wanted to make the film from the point of view of an 11-year-old kid, and Aline Bonetto, my designer, and we sort of pored over National Geographic magazines, and we had a room plastered with these pictures, and we tried to make connections between them. And in a kind of classic surrealist manner, we would take disparate ideas and put them together and try and create new meaning. So the caves at the end of the movie are very much based on the caves, the crystal caves in Mexico. The forests are based on Vietnam. The mines are very clearly, obviously, based on Salgado's photographs of the Brazilian gold mines. So it's very much trying to find things that an 11-year-old boy growing up in London might have glimpsed. You know, the Neverbird is basically roadkill, and then bring them all together.
Oh, great. Lady's got a microphone here. Great. Okay.
Hi, my question's for Rooney. As Edith said earlier, that obviously Tiger Lily is such a strong female character, and I just wondered, how did you immerse yourself into that role, and how did you want to make Tiger Lily your own?
Well, I spent a lot of time with the stunt department. I think I was basically with the stunt department like all day, every day, and especially when Hugh got there, because I showed up for my little stunt rehearsal one day and he was already in there and like knew the whole first half of the fight. He knew all the choreography, and I was like, oh, fuck. And when we started rehearsing it together, we would be going and you just never got tired. And you'd be like, you want to go again? I'd be like, okay. So there was a lot of physical training that had to go into it. And Joe does a brilliant amount of rehearsal. You know, it was really just about spending time with all these guys. And I remember the first day when I went on to the Native Village set when it was finished, and the Ugandan Children's Choir was there, and there was like hundreds of extras, and it was just incredible. I mean, you couldn't really. It just made it so easy to be in the world because it was created for us so beautifully. So it was really easy to play in it.
Great, thank you. Microphone over here, and we'll get to the over there. Great.
I've got a question for Rooney. You play a very strong female character, which is quite rare, but there has been some controversies surrounding you being cast in a Native American role.
Yes.
How did that influence your performance?
It didn't really influence my performance at all. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about that, and certainly when I had wanted to work with Joe for quite a long time, so when it was presented to me that he wanted to meet with me, I was like, well, there's not really a part for me in it. And they were like, no, he wants to meet with you for Tiger Lily. And I was like, well, I mean, that's not really possible. But, you know, I'd love to meet with him anyway because I love Joe. And we sat down and he explained his vision of the world to me, and it just made sense. He showed me, you know, the collection of all the images he had put together of how he saw the Native Village, and it just really made sense to me. You know, in the original book, Tiger Lily is not a Native American. That's something that was was later put into the Peter Pan adaptations, but it's not actually a part of J.M. Barrie's story, you know? It's like Joe said, it's, Neverland is Peter's imagination, and we wanted the natives in the native village to be natives of Neverland and natives of, as Joe likes to say, planet Earth, so.
Great, thank you. Lady here with the red mic, thank you.
Oh, hello. I wanted to ask about Neverland again. Clearly there's a lot of green screen stuff going on, but you did build some practical sets. Does that help you as actors to get into your characters more? Specifically, I need to ask Garrett that actually, because you did Tron, which was, unless you got zapped into a computer game, was actually a lot of green screen. So does it help you get into character having pirate ships and stuff?
Yeah, I'd say that. I mean, yeah, when
I wanted to make a film that was full of colour.
And then when I'd go back and see some of that stuff, I'd be like, man, I wish I would have asked more questions to see where I could explore some of this space and be more involved in the CGI surroundings, because you have to feel a connection between the actors in it, or you're slightly taken out. With the village, I mean, it was awesome. It was a playground for us. With the ships on the other stage at Cardington, we had the Ranger, the Jolly Roger, and another ship that were all built on these hydraulic gimbals. So you're moving with it as well, and you don't have to fake as much. And yeah, and there'd be other times when we'd be in the raft, and because like when we were doing Tron, I was sitting there watching Jeff Bridges figure out how he was playing with all this stuff, and you know, he got to pull something up like this and turn it, and they could put the CGI around all that. So I wanted to be more involved in this go-through, in this film with it. So we'd be in the raft on a gimbal with no water around, and you start playing. You're like, so how far is the water down? If I do this, can we splash? If I do this, can we squirt? And little things like just to make it seem a little more realistic, so we're not on sets the whole time.
Thank you. Gentleman here with the mic.
To Hugh Jackman and Rooney Mara about arts and about luck. Hugh Jackman, you have, I'm sure you have today a big part of screenplays, they offer you. But if you think back, you had the fortune to be Jean Valjean, a great thing. But was there also not so good decision by you for some part you haven't played, or did you wish to play this or that part and didn't get it? And the Rooney Mara parts, you have made a wonderful creation of Lisbeth Salander. I have seen the Swedish versions of all three pictures, and I never thought that it would be so good. And then we hope to have the next movies, and they didn't happen. What is your opinion about parts? Good luck, bad luck.
Yeah, a lot of it's a mystery. I mean, yeah, it's in hindsight, you can look back, and for something like Wolverine, another actor was cast, and I'd auditioned, didn't get the part, and the actor ended up being injured and stuck on a film, and I happened to be in Los Angeles at the time, actually organising things around the adoption of my son. So it was seemingly sort of very random, and I can look back and go, well, that is maybe it's fate or something in there. You can call it luck, whatever you want, but of course there are moments like that for all of us in life, you know, for good and bad. And I suppose as an actor, the only thing you control is working hard, having a lot of fun, and if you do get a chance at something, making the most of it. I slightly regret not doing Chicago. I thought I was too young at the time when they offered me that part, because they had a line saying, "I've seen it all, kid," and I think I was 30 at the time. I said, oh, this is a bit of a stretch. And when I saw the movie, I was like, makeup, just should have put some makeup on. But actually, Richard Gere was phenomenal, and he was better for the part, so, you know.
My question is about the sequels to...
Yes, also about, you had a sensational part, you were fantastic, and we all believe this is, the two sequels, and it didn't happen. So about good luck and bad luck also in your.
Yeah, I guess that was really bad luck. I don't know. I mean, I would love to do it. I've been wanting to do it now for 3 or 4 years, but I really have as little idea as everyone else as to what their plan is. If they're going to do more, if they're going to do more with me, I don't really know. But it's definitely something I would still very much love to do. But very bad luck thus far.
Okay, and I think we've got time for 2 more quick questions. So these 2 hands that are up here. Thank you.
Hi, question for
One there
you.
and one here, sorry.
Is it true that you... hi, I'm here.
Oh, hey, sorry.
Is it true that you bought members of the cast and crew lottery tickets on a regular basis while you were filming this movie? And if you did, was there much success? And did you buy them for yourself and have any joy?
Yeah, I did on Fridays. It's what we do in Australia to make sure the crew stay after lunch. Kidding. It's bad stereotype. They work very hard in Australia. But when I first started working on big American movies, it was uncomfortable for me how segregated everything was because they were so massive, and I was used to the Australian, similar to making movies here, where there's no stand-ins, and so if they were lighting for an hour, you were standing with the crew for an hour and got to know everyone, and I sort of preferred that. There were no trailers, no one went off to their trailer, you just hung on set. And so I just realised halfway through my first movie there was a good half of the crew that I just never really came to contact with, and I didn't like that feeling. And so I invented this sort of, I suppose, tradition, and from that moment on, ADs called me in on Friday whether I was working or not somehow. and I think that in 15 years, I have found out that one guy won $1,500. That's by far the most anyone has ever won. So there's a moral to the story. If you're looking to get rich, don't buy a lot of scratchy tickets.
And final question from the man with the mic down here.
Questions for Levi. After a promo tour like this, with press conferences and premieres and parties and stuff like that, how will it be to go back to school?
No, I don't. I'm not very excited for that, but I go to school. I mean, I do tutoring, so I'm still kind of learning, and I'm learning things on set. So, and it's a fun way of learning things. I'm getting to learn all different life skills while I'm on set. I'm not very excited to go back to school. I hope to stay with acting.
I'm going to tell, I hope you don't mind, I hope you're not going to get in trouble for this story, but Joe very kindly had all the sort of cast and crew after the premiere for a party at his house. It was around 10:30, we had to do press the next day. I said, Joe, I'm going to head off, and as I was heading out the door, Levi was just strolling in. Like, like, here comes the 12-year-old. I'm like, I thought I was an Aussie, but no.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today, and a huge round of applause for our wonderful panel today. Paul, Garrett, Rooney, Hugh, Levi and Joe. Thank you very much.
No, but